Greetings and welcome to Change the World. My name is Guy Dauncey. My guest today is Whelm King, who's a Nanaimo entrepreneur, businessman, activist, gets up to all sorts of trouble. And today we're talking about the Nanaimo Climate Pledge. But welcome to the show, Whelm. Before we get into the pledge, tell viewers a little bit about how you got involved in this big project called the Nanaimo Climate Pledge.
Yeah, I'd be happy to, and I'm really pleased to be here. Thanks for having me. As you said, I've done quite a number of things in my life, and I've always been interested in what's happening in the world. I've studied it quite deeply. I'm interested in sociology. I'm interested in environmentalism. I'm interested very much in food politics. And for me, really, the turning point which moved me from being a kind of entrepreneur and business person to realize I need to work in climate was last year's heat dome. The heat dome to me was fully representative of the fact that climate change is here, that it's a crisis, that we can't escape it, and it's really where I should be putting my focus. It was also a bit fueled by the pandemic and seeing just how quickly things can change on a sociological level. And I realized, I need to be working in the climate crisis world and be part of it. And so I reached out to a very well-known, handsome gentleman who happened to be named Guy Dauncey, and said, can you offer me any advice? And he said, well, not only can I offer you some advice, but, I'm thinking about starting a project and we have some funding and maybe you should be part of this project. And a couple of weeks later, I was the program manager for what became the Nanaimo Climate Pledge.
Yeah, so it's quite a mess, this climate thing. There was a report out just recently that said in the big weather disasters that we had in 2021, the heat dome, the floods, the cost was $17 billion of impact on our economy. And so for people who are wrestling, like, is this climate crisis real or not? They read all sorts of confusing things about it. There's a very real impact. And all these disasters, they've always happened in the past. There's always been storms, there's always been floods, there's always been heat waves, but they're getting exaggerated and stronger because of the way we're interfering with adding greenhouse gases to the planet through burning fossil fuels and things like that.
Yeah, more frequent and more severe.
Yeah,
is the truth of the matter. And yeah, on the one hand, when people lose their homes, become climate refugees, climate migrants, or just climate displaced even temporarily, it's horrendous and horrific. And even people who aren't suffering from that yet, yes, the economic impacts, they're predicted to be staggering, unlike anything else we've ever seen. And so there's not really an economic case for not shifting towards a climate solution.
And the flip side of all this is that when we look at what the solutions to this are, which is fundamentally moving to 100% renewable energy, heat pumps, electric cars, electric trains, stopping burning fossil fuels, growing more local food, growing food organically, preserving our forests, what's not to like? I find the vision enticing of what it could be. Yeah. And it's zero. The old argument used to be, you've got to either protect the environment or support the economy. You can't do both. And it's clearly that's a wrong argument. If we want to support our economy, we need to act on climate.
Yeah. Yeah. So the old argument was it's the sacrifice, right?
Yeah.
Was that, the new argument is, no, it's a better world. It's like that great cartoon that I'm sure many people have seen where, there's someone standing up on a stage and listing all of the great benefits of making the changes. And someone in the audience says, well, what if this is a hoax and we're just making the world a better place for nothing?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
For my part, we shifted to an electric car. We shifted to a heat pump. We took out the gas heater in the house. Yeah. We're not suffering in any way. We buy less stuff, but people don't need stuff to make them happy. They need money to pay rent. They need money to pay the core bills that matter. And running an electric car is actually a lot cheaper. Having a community in which you can cycle everywhere. Imagine that if Nanaimo or Ladysmith or Parksville, if you had safe cycling lanes everywhere, decent, affordable transit service, a car share cooperative so you could rent a car when you need to. You don't need to own a car at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what is the Nanaimo Climate Pledge? I know what it is, but I want you to tell our viewers what it is.
Of course. So the Nanaimo Climate Pledge, which is a project of a local organization, a great organization called the Nanaimo Climate Action Hub, who formally formed about 2 years ago and have done some amazing things in their short time. It was born out of a project that they created in 2021 called Community Climate Circles or Community Climate Connectors. It had a couple of names. And when I came into the project, that was still its title, but we shifted over to a broader outreach. And the pledge really is a simple concept, and it's based on some simple concepts. And the biggest one is this, that when we look at our society, let's take Nanaimo, but this could be expanded to BC or Canada, we divide our populace into three general groups. And on the one hand, you have people who are aware of climate change, aware of its impacts to some degree at least, aware that it's going to get worse, and crucially, are taking substantial action already. These are the people who are doing the heavy lifting for the rest of us right now. On the flip side, you have people who are, for one reason or another, let's just call them climate deniers. These are people who are very unlikely to make any substantial action in their life to be part of the solution.
Because they don't believe it's a real thing. They don't accept the science of the climate crisis.
Yeah, it could be any number of reasons, right? And that probably being the most common.
Yeah.
And then you have this big group in the middle that we call the middle majority. And here's the definition of that. These are people who have some awareness of the climate crisis, have some awareness of the fact that it's causing negative impacts, and some awareness that it's probably going to get worse, but crucially are not yet taking any substantial actions to be part of the solution. That's who we're trying to reach. And so the Nanaimo Climate Pledge is approaching that middle majority through a variety of different methods of communication to see if we can determine which methods are the most effective. And from there, we can focus in on it, hone in on it, work on messaging, and try to expand it throughout the region and potentially throughout the province. We're in the trial phase right now, phase 1, which launched about a month ago. Everything's going pretty well.
How's the whole project funded? I mean, a big scheme like this needs some proper support. So how are we doing that? How are you doing?
Yeah, so we're supported right now by 3 entities. The city of Nanaimo supports us, the federal government through a program called the New Horizons for Seniors program, and an organization in the United Kingdom called the Royal Society for the Arts. That's our 3 principal funders at this time. We've also partnered up with UBC. UBC has a fantastic scholarship program for their graduate students with a wonderful PhD candidate named Michelle Hack-Heckburn, who's an anthropologist, and she is handling all of our data analysis, both quantitative and qualitative, as well as offering a bunch of guidance from her very deep kind of sociological understanding, being an anthropology expert.
Right. So if someone either gets one of the brochures in the mail,
yeah,
or if they go to the website, which I believe is simply nanaimoclimatepledge.ca,
yeah,
what will they find, and what do you want them to do?
Yeah, absolutely. And that is the website, nanaimoclimatepledge.ca. We also have nanaimoclimatepledge.com. And so they're both active. They'll both take you to the same website. So the pledge itself is a survey. The pledge is based around what we consider to be the 12 moves that individuals can take to be part of the climate solution. Most of those are personal actions you can take to directly lower your greenhouse gas emissions. And a few of them are what we call activism, which is simply trying to facilitate other people taking action. And so that could be something like joining a climate organization. It could be also something like holding a family meeting and, talking to the people around you. So that really is what the pledge is. It's going to our website, taking the pledge, and committing to one or more of these 12 actions. And that serves 2 purposes. The first purpose is it signifies a level of commitment for you, the person taking the pledge, that yes, I want to be part of this solution. Now is the time. It's not too late. It's more important than ever. I'm in. And secondly, by taking the pledge, which again is just a survey, takes about 10 minutes, it gives us the data that we can look at to determine, well, what is being effective here? How can we best communicate with other people in the community? How can we best encourage and empower the rest of the households in our community to join you and be part of being, in the climate solution, which we all have to be, part of, all hands on deck.
Yeah. So apart from the feeling that people are doing the right thing by the world, are you spicing the pot? Are there any giveaways to help to encourage people?
So we did partner with a number of different local businesses. So let's be clear here. The primary motivation that we are hoping to inspire is an understanding and realization that our world's in trouble. And crucially, we can do something about it. You can do something about it. many people already are, millions of people across Canada right now are taking action in these ways, and you can join them. And we want that to be the primary motivation. But it's always nice to have some juicy things. We have some amazing local businesses that do phenomenal work that is in line with kind of the climate work we're doing. And so we partnered with a number of them, and we have a whole list of prizes. So everyone who takes the pledge will also be entered into a random draw, and we'll be giving that out in a couple of months for a number of great prizes, including some very nice grand prizes. So yeah, there's some juicy extras. We really want the primary motivation to be people realizing, hey, we can do this. Let's do it together. But it's also, pretty nice to win a free dinner or some whale watching or something like that.
Yeah, that's cool. So I'm curious, and I'm sure viewers are, to know what are these items in the pledge.
Sure.
And we've got time if we take them briefly. Let's go one to one. What are the items? Show people what the brochure looks like first, in case you get it in the mail and if you see it lying around.
So just to note before I show this, because this is just going to be me as a human holding up a piece of paper on a screen, this is downloadable on our website. So the first two things you will see on our website are where you can take the pledge and do you want to download the brochure. But this is what the brochure looks like. So this is the front cover of the brochure. And crucially, this is the meat of it. I'm just trying to see here.
Yeah.
This is the meat of it. So this contains the 12 actions laid out in a very organized, clear, easy to read manner. And you can learn much more about all of the actions on our website. So our website contains much more granular information. It contains all of our sources. There's nothing hidden in any of what we're doing here. You can go to the direct sources of where we got all of our information.
Let's see if we can do this.
Okay.
12 minutes, 12. What's item number one?
Item number one, this is the most important thing that we recommend for virtually everyone, is hold a climate meeting. Don't do it alone. If you live in a household with others, perhaps that's your family, perhaps it's friends, perhaps it's, loved ones, hold a climate meeting. And it doesn't have to be necessarily the people in your household, but hold a meeting so you're not doing it alone. Find a place where you can express any fears or anxieties or experiences you've had, and you can form a collaborative, group.
So this is not hire a community hall kind of thing.
No.
Get around the kitchen table with your family, basically.
Yeah, exactly. This is a small group.
Or in the workplace when you're having coffee together, talk about it.
Yeah, it could be your coworkers, colleagues. Form a small group, and maybe you're not going to do everything together, but where you can support each other. Don't feel like you need to do it alone, and we're here for you too, but form a core group. That's what we recommend for the vast majority of people as a very first action.
I'm going to jump. What is number two?
So number two moves into your house. So if you are a house owner or have the capacity to change the heating source in your house, if you use fossil fuels, oil or gas right now, switching to a heat pump is one of the single biggest and most important things you can do. You could also switch to baseboard heaters, but if you're going to go to electric, why not go to a heat pump? There's currently up to $11,000 in rebates available, and heat pumps are expensive, but $11,000 is also very expensive.
Actually, the federal government sweetened the pot recently. I believe if you have an oil heater, I saw a heat pump company saying up to 19,000 in rebates if you're taking out an oil heater. There you go.
So it's changing very regularly. There's a lot of incentive for this. We in BC have very, very clean hydro electricity. And so moving off of fossil fuels heating your house is one of the biggest things you can do.
What if you're a tenant in an apartment block owned by a distant landlord? What do you do? Can you do anything here?
Well, it's much more limited. So what we would recommend in that situation is talk to your landlord and try to convey to them, hey, this will actually save you money in the long term. This is a more reliable heating source. Convey the benefits to them. But you might be limited and it might be not the action for you. That's why we have a number of other different actions, which whether you own your own home or not, are within your control.
So those of us who have installed a heat pump know the wonderful hidden benefits of a heat pump when the weather gets really hot, which is...
Well, you get air conditioning. It's a two-way unit. And so, people put these air conditioning units in their windows and all of these things in conjunction to a heating system. A heat pump does both. If it's air to air, a heat pump does both. And you have a delightfully cool house in the summer and a delightfully warm house in the winter.
Yeah. During the heat dome, we just had to open up the little electric thing, switch it to cooling instead of heating. Yeah. And suddenly we had a place that was a steady 20 degrees. And
I have it in my house too. And I mean, I like the heat, but I like being able to get away from it as well.
So number three on the list.
Number three is kind of just a group category of changing your diet. And really, when we talk about diet, we're talking about animal and animal products for the most part. And then within animal and animal products, the number one thing to understand is that if you eat a regular or large amount of beef, cow or cow products, dairy or beef, changing how much of that you eat is the single most important thing you can do from a dietary basis. The cows use a tremendous amount of the greenhouse gas percentages going into the atmosphere on a regular basis.
Yeah. So my viewers will know that I've got a big background in the climate crisis, but the data is showing that the world's livestock industry, which is fundamentally, beef and cattle and dairy, produces more climate pollution or greenhouse gases than all the world's transportation, shipping, flying, driving put together. So it's quite it's a combination of the fact that cows are burping all the time, and they've got these famous three stomachs, and they're burping methane gas, which traps 84 times more heat. And then people are cutting down the Amazon rainforest to raise cattle and to grow soybeans to feed the cattle.
Yeah, the land use is a major issue, and yes, 84 times more warming than CO2 is methane, and so it's a very, very potent gas, and the land use may be even more potent. So we list several different food things that people can do, but really, if someone was going to take it seriously, the number one thing to do is if you eat beef or consume a lot of dairy, reducing or eliminating that, there's nothing you can do that's more important from a dietary standpoint.
So does that mean a good Christmas present or a birthday gift might be a good vegetarian cookbook or a vegan cookbook for people to sort of start experimenting with other ways of eating?
I think that's a great idea. And there's amazing vegan products out there too. And again, we're not necessarily recommending that people have to go from being a very large meat eater to being completely vegan. Any reduction helps, but the more reduction, the better. And so, moving towards not eating any cow or cow products is the most important thing dietarily.
So is it true or is it a myth that there are people locally who run vegetarian or vegan companies who'll come to your home and do a meal for you and show you how to do it?
There are some that I know of, and they're the kind of things that, as we move towards the directions we need to be moving towards, I think the kind of things that will become much more spurred. And
I can see that as a great birthday gift, a gift certificate for someone to come to your house and cook a really tasty vegan or vegetarian. In English, I say vegan. In Canada, it's vegan, isn't it? I think we've got to get it.
I say vegan too.
Oh, there you go. Well, anyway, what's number 4 on our list?
So the next on the list is just simply clothing. So the clothing industry produces a massive amount of the world's greenhouse gas emissions, about 10%. They also produce about 20% of the world's wastewater. So that's fresh water that we could be using for things like drinking, which in many parts of the world is a problem, that is wasted, meaning it wasn't used for drinking. It was used in some other industry and was not usable as drinking water. So the clothing industry uses a tremendous amount of our resources, and it's massively on the increase. So since the year 2000 to now, so only about 20 years, more than double the garments on an annual basis are produced. Fast fashion has become this thing where you buy something, you wear it not many times, and you throw it out. And so we list a number of different ways that you can massively reduce your greenhouse gas pollution by changing how you engage with clothes, keeping them longer, buying secondhand, recycling them, lots of things like that. That's the next one, is clothing.
I know of women friends who have a girls' clothing share circle when they all bring something they're happy to share, and they get a whole new outfit without paying any money at all, right?
Yeah.
So I said there were 12 items altogether. I think we skipped 2. We put 2 or 3 together under food.
We're grouping together a little bit here. So we grouped food together as one item.
So after clothing, what comes next in the pledge?
Transportation. Okay. And so transportation is obviously a major one. And when people think about greenhouse gases, and particularly CO2, this is the big one that they think about. And transportation can be divided into 2 groupings, cars and planes. These are the big transportation issues. So with cars, there's really a couple of options. Option 1 is, can you drive less? Yeah. Is that possible for you to drive less? Can you bike more? Can you take transit? Can you walk? Any other form of transportation? Is it possible to drive less? Yeah. The second is, if you're someone who buys a car new, whether that's every year or every 10 years or whatever it is, really consider moving to an electric car. So an electric car will take in BC, because of how good our hydro is, an electric car will take your CO2 emissions from a very high point to almost zero.
Yeah.
And that's the best option if you can afford it. There's also great rebates for that right now. I believe that there are up to $9,000 rebates currently right now off a new electric car. That's between federal and provincial rebates. So those are the two. Can you reduce how much you drive, and or is it possible for you to move to an electric car?
And we do need to add that right now, you can't go out and buy an electric car. It's put your name on a waiting list for an electric car.
There's a bit of a delay, but that's actually not necessarily specific to the electric car world. That's kind of just what's happening in cars right now because we have this backlog of microchips from COVID and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But yes, it would be a bit of a delay, but it's so just
what about someone who wants to cycle but says there are hills and I can't manage the hills?
Well, it's an issue. I mean, on the one hand, there's an old adage of like, am I too unfit to exercise? It's like, no, that's why you exercise. On the other hand, again, what we're encouraging people to do is to do what you can do.
I'm trying to prompt you to electric bikes here.
Oh, you want me to talk about electric bikes?
Yeah, I mean, make the hills disappear, right?
Yeah, e-bikes are amazing. And I know many people who are both mountain bikers and transportation bikers who use e-bikes and would never go back. So yeah, e-bikes do very much take away the issue of, it's a particularly hilly city because Nanaimo is a little bit hilly.
So what I recommend is for a fun trip, go to a bicycle store and ask to do a little, they'll let you take a bike out for 10 minutes. Take an e-bike out, go to the bottom of the hill, and you sail up to the top without any pain in your muscles. It's like amazing. It's like you're defeating gravity. It's like quite astonishing.
Well, it's kind of halfway between a bicycle and a motorbike.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Right. It's an electric bike because you can get all electric motorbikes.
So what about people watching this show who either absolutely can't afford to buy an electric car, they're dealing with an old cheap car, but they like to cycle more, but they think it's not safe. It's the stuff they can do to pressure the regional district on Nanaimo to do better bike lanes and make it safer?
Sure. So if we jump ahead to one of our later topics, is we recommend writing a letter to your MLA or MP encouraging them to take climate action. Now, our strong recommendation is to work on a provincial or federal level because they actually have the most amount of clout to make large, substantial changes, but it applies just as much to being in regular communication with your city councilors. And so contact your city councilors, contact the RDN and say, hey, I'm in support of the bike lanes that are being created right now. I'm in support of further bicycling infrastructure, which will allow safe biking throughout our city.
Yeah. So what's next on the list of the pledge?
Okay, so the next, we're still in transportation, but the next is flying. So the statistics on flying, even though flying only accounts for about 2% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions, it is hugely disproportionate. And if you're someone who flies regularly, it is probably your single biggest greenhouse gas pollution that you personally are responsible for.
Yeah.
And so for people who fly on a very, very regular basis, there is very likely nothing you can do that's more impactful than flying less. Flying, the statistics are heavily skewed. It's something like less than 10% of people who ever take a flight emit more than 50% of the pollution that comes from flying. So if you're someone who flies a lot, there's likely nothing you can do that will be better for this planet than flying less.
Yeah, and we all have what we have to do, love miles. We got family in another country, and we're not saying don't stop flying ever, but don't treat it like an ordinary indulgence, like whenever you feel like it, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and again, these are all really personal decisions. I mean, on the one hand, our planet is somewhere between on fire and partially on fire.
Yeah.
And so we all should be going, hey, this is our house. This is our communal house. This is an emergency. This is a crisis right now. On the other hand, we each have our individual lives, and it's up to us to determine, well, what really can I do? And so, none of this is, hey, you have to do everything right now, immediately. But we need to move towards being the solution.
Our time is going to run out on us really quickly. What's next on the list here, right?
Yeah, so the next ones are fairly short. We already talked about sending a letter. The next is a sister to that, which is vote for politicians who explicitly prioritize climate action.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Really prioritize that.
Yeah.
And finally, consider joining a climate organization. So the Nanaimo Climate Action Hub is amazing. It's a phenomenal group of people. You'll find support, and throughout all of this, the crucial thing, like almost everyone I know is nervous about the climate. And the younger you are, the more likely you are to be nervous about it. The statistics bear all of this out.
Yeah.
And the only known solution for this climate anxiety, which we all should have, the only people who aren't anxious about it are the people who aren't paying attention or are in denial, is climate action. And joining a climate organization will put you together with other people who are actively being part of the solution. You'll find support, you'll find community, you'll learn a lot. Yeah. It's fun.
Is there a role for the way we use our money and do our banking and all this? Because I read about, I know that the banks pour a huge amount of money into investing in new fossil fuel production.
Absolutely. And I missed that one. It was a little bit earlier in the list. So yes, thank you. But yeah, we list a couple of ways of making your money more climate friendly. And really that is, if you can not bank with one of the major banks who are some of the biggest supporters of the oil and gas industry in the world, the Canadian 5 banks, and if you're invested in stocks, mutual funds, etc., that support anything that's detrimental to the climate, you can move those into more climate friendly investments.
So move to a credit union when basically all your investments are going to help people buy homes and stuff like that?
Local credit union is the way to go.
So we got 2 minutes left. Where does this project go when people we want to get 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 people signing the pledge?
Yeah.
Where do we go after that?
So we're in phase 1 right now, which is a test phase within the Nanaimo area. Then we plan to expand throughout the Nanaimo area before potentially launching province-wide. And also, I just want to mention one of the methodologies of our branches, which I think is worth noting, is a project called the Community Climate Connectors. And these are people in the community that are really going above and beyond. So these are people who have taken the pledge, and what we offer them is a 3-hour training in how to have excellent climate conversations with people you already know in your life right now to support and encourage them. It's one of the biggest things people can do to magnify their own impact, because it's amazing. You take the pledge, you take action, you're amazing. But if you want to go above and beyond, being a connector, we will give you the training and support to how you can bring this into your community and greatly magnify your impact and inspire others to take action. That really is one of the methods and one of the things we really want to encourage people to consider.
And if I'm right, because I mean, I trained and work as a climate connector myself, having these conversations, they're not about preaching at people saying you should do this, you should do that. They're about listening and just having a friendly conversation, like, what do you feel about the climate crisis? What kind of things can we do? And then introducing the brochure?
Yeah, basically, yes, that's exactly right. And it's also really important to note that we're not looking for people who are climate experts. In fact, we specifically want just people in our community. You know, you don't have to be an expert. We will give you some level of knowledge and expertise, but what we really want is people who are just passionate about being part of the solution, not feeling like I have to have all the answers, but I want to be in this. I want to be in the solution. I want to be able to look back and say, I did what I could do to be part of the solution to this global problem.
This is great. Well, thank you for your contribution, your dedication to make this thing real. If you're watching this, the website, remember, is www.nanaimoclimatepledge.ca. You can go there, you can find the pledge, you can take the pledge, there's a contact button, I take it, where people get in touch with you if they want to become a climate connector and do that training.
Yeah. More information about being a climate connector, much more information about all of the actions, a whole page of various climate myths and the reality of those. Yeah, lots of information there.
Fabulous. Well, thanks very much, Whelm. I've enjoyed this conversation. This is a big, important topic. And to viewers, thank you for listening, watching. We'll have another who knows who to interview next for a scintillating, imaginative conversation. Thanks for watching. Take care. Goodbye.